Despite the Civil War being one of the bloodiest battles our nation has ever fought, people hold that era with a certain romanticism, a certain charm, perhaps because of the way of life at that time. Who knows for sure? But stories about the Civil War and about President Lincoln are always quite popular. And I came across the following article in an August 1st, 1917 issue of American Lutheran Survey, and it's just simply titled Spy Problem During the Civil War and a New Lincoln Story. So that is what I'm going to share with you right now. During the Civil War, the government at Washington was constantly in danger. The capital at that time was not in sympathy with the Lincoln administration. The spy menace was so dangerous that the new president came into the city incognito. There was 10 times the trouble and danger about the spy system then than there is now, but we must take into consideration the fact that the facilities of the government now to run down and trace all sorts of plots and intrigues and to compass the discovery of spies are 100-fold better now than they were back then when Lincoln was in the executive office. To offset this present advantage to the government, it should be stated that the enemies of the government during the Civil War were to an extent bold and open in their opposition to what was being done by the Lincoln administration. They were against the war. They declared it a failure. They passed resolutions against its continuance. They sent delegations to Congress, and they elected men to the House of Representatives on the anti-war issue and obtained a majority. The writer, while seldom referring to personal reminiscence, will never forget that his father told him about the congressional campaign of 1862. The administration lost the House of Representatives that fall, and immediately after the election in November, a number of Republicans from the West, feeling very blue and downhearted, went to Washington, and they went straight from the train to the White House to call on the president. If I remember rightly, the party was headed by Owen Lovejoy of Illinois, who was sometimes called the Parson politician. He was a preacher for years at Princeton, Illinois. "Well, Mr. President," remarked Lovejoy, "the Copperheads seem to be in the saddle. What is going to happen?" "Oh," responded Mr. Lincoln with a sad smile, "I used to ride on horseback quite a bit back home on the circuit, and I often found that the saddle was bound to slide whenever the stirrup slipped." While the Copperheads, so-called, were strong, there were some men who professed to be for the Union but who were secretly against it. They were the most to be feared. There was even talk of a suspicion in the great Civil War cabinet, which without question was a divided family, but which accomplished the most wonderful things through the very disagreements which seemed to threaten dire results. Today, the men who speak out openly and above board and give frank expression to their views, who object to the way the war business is being conducted, and present absolute facts to show that the government of the United States, like every other government, must be suspicious of everything in wartime, is looked upon as un-American. But all American history is on their side, and there are not only past but present precedents to prove it. So I guess there was a lot of espionage and intrigue back in President Lincoln's day too. I can't even begin to imagine the confusion and upset, the tumultuous feelings on both sides during that Civil War era. Well, thanks for taking a listen, and have a great night.